Hi everyone. So today is going to be about the beginning workshop. Mainly this is going to be covering functions and variables in JavaScript. And it's going to be mainly the beginner stuff, explaining what it means, how you actually can understand these different things, and how do you actually use them as a software developer. Right. So 1 second. Okay, so just a quick introduction of like who we are, what Sigmaschool. So Sigmaschool is basically a coding school. We are basically one of the top coding schools in Southeast Asia, actually the top coding school in Southeast Asia. So we mainly help developers to be able to graduate from our bootcamp, to be able to land jobs and be able to enter the workforce, even without like prior experience and so on. So basically, we've been running this since 2023. And we've been getting great results. We've been getting a lot of good feedback on Google and Course Report. So as you can see, total across the board, we're getting like a bunch of like 5-star reviews, 90% of satisfaction rate, right? And a little bit quick, like what we basically do is we partner with hiring partners like these, so like Grab, Bijang, and all, to basically vet not just our curriculum, but also our graduates in terms of, okay, what are they going to be eligible? And also we basically have like student success, seeing results, and so on and so forth. People coming from different backgrounds. So if you're totally like no experience in programming whatsoever, don't worry. A lot of our students are mainly coming from non-tech experience. So Sigmaschool also has been around since 2023, and we've also been featured in press along the way, sharing our like goals and how we actually want to help individuals like yourself to be able to learn and also progress with tech, so become like future developers. Now, so today's workshop, I think there's people coming in. Let me just accept them one moment. Okay. So for today's workshop, it's mainly going to be covering the what is variables and functions in JavaScript, right? We'll be engaging in some coding examples and also some challenges, so you guys can actually see, okay, how do I actually apply the things that I've actually just learned, right? So I can adding more people in. Okay. All right. Now everyone's in? Okay, so now we'll be covering, first, we want to understand what is JavaScript before we understand what is a variable, right? So JavaScript is basically a versatile programming language that makes websites interactive. It runs in different, directly in the browser, and allows developers to create like dynamic content, be able to respond to user. So whenever you click a button, how does it react and stuff like that. So it makes it seamless and how you interact with like YouTube, Facebook, Netflix and stuff. So that is basically written in JavaScript. So it's a versatile language. If it sounds very fancy, but if you can take away everything that I just mentioned, it's basically the brains of what happens behind a web page or a web app, right? So you can see a picture on the left. HTML is basically the skeleton on what gets built in the web on a website. CSS is the skin on how it looks, how fancy it looks, how beautiful, whether it's blue, pink, or whatever. JavaScript is the brains, the one that does the logic on what it actually should do. When you click a button, what is it actually supposed to do? That is basically JavaScript's job. Now, variables in JavaScript is basically storing data effectively. So variables are essential in all programming, whether it can be JavaScript, whether it can be a different language or a different tech stack. So what variables are is basically, you can think of it like it holds data, whether it can be numbers or text. So have you ever wondered like how Instagram actually is able to track and able to remember every time you go back, you log back in, on how many likes you have in your previous post or your recent posts? Those are actually how Instagram actually tracks it, is using variables. So they store how many likes you've gotten, and then every time you log back in, it's able to show you the number of likes. And it also updates if you got a new like yesterday, and when you check today, you have additional like. So that's how variable works. It's a store of data. So how do you actually visualize variables? So think of variable like a box, and you're just putting like a number, a value inside that box, and that is what variable is. So if you look at the image on the right side, so you can see that weight equals 65. Now, this is how you usually write it and how you see it in code. So basically, weight is the variable name. So the name is what we call weight. So we're trying to store the variable weight. And equals is what we use to assign a value to it. And 65 is the value. So basically, you're saying in this line is the weight equals 65. And the variable, if you visualize it at the bottom here, it's drawing a box that has a label weight, and you're putting the value 65 inside that box. And that is how you actually can picture and visualize what variables are. So a box, put value inside, name it, that's a variable. So there are different ways also on how you can actually categorize and declare variables. So there are different types of boxes. You can think of it like that. So there's medium, small, there's boxes that you can share with your friends, you can pass it around, or there are some boxes that are just stationary and you can't pick it up. So there's going to be three main types in JavaScript and how you actually declare variables. So over here, we have a label, assign equals and value, but we don't have a declaration. So we don't know what type of variable it is. So the three main ones are going to be here: const, let, and var. So with these three types, I'll go ahead and explain them later. So over here, you can see the code on the left. So when we want, for example, if you're looking like playing a game and you scored like 67 points. So how does it actually store the variable? So how it declares it, first, if you scored 67, so const point, that is the keyword for the declaration keyword. Points is going to be the name, the label of the variable, and then 67 is going to be the value. So let's break it down in terms of what these individually mean. So const, let's see, let me draw so you guys can see. Okay, okay. So let's start with const. So const is basically short for constant. So constants means it's a value that cannot be changed. So whenever you declare the points variable, you can't change the number 67 in it. So at this line, when you call this line, it means you're forcing 67, the value 67, to the variable points, and it's unchangeable. That's what this keyword means, const. So it's constant. Now, points, on the other hand, here, points is the label and the name of the variable. So if you want to maybe do like a height or an age, what you do is const age equals whatever age you want, right? So that is just the name after the keyword. That is what you would use to call your variable. And the equal sign is just an assign operator. So it's not like math where 2 plus 2 equals this, but it's mainly to assign the value to the specific variable. So it's an assignment operator that assigns the value to the right side, which is the 67, which is the expression, to the name on the left, points. And 67 is basically a number value. So there's going to be like different types of values as well, but we won't touch on that today. So number 5, you can see a semicolon at the end here. This in JavaScript is not necessary, but it's the expression like a full stop in coding. So for example, when the editor goes through line by line, basically you're telling it that, okay, this is the end of that specific line or code that you want it to do, right? So this is like a full stop. In JavaScript, it's not strict in terms of whether you need this, but most coding languages do require like a expression or full stop statement. Now, there are more people joining in. Give me 1 second. Okay, cool. All right, let's continue. So basically, looking at this const points equals 67, how do you actually visualize it? Is it's going to be, remember the how I walked you through earlier, is variables are basically the box, points is the label, and you're putting a value inside that box. So to visualize it, it's basically points, and you draw a box. Okay, so points variable have now a value 67. So this is how you visualize points. Now let's say, oops, let's go eraser. Now let's say if you want to do like a different variable. So say const, earlier I mentioned age. So say, forgive the handwriting, say you are 27, right? Now, this basically means you have a box, you name it age, and you're putting the value 27 inside it. That is basically variable. This is how you can visualize it. Or even if you say name equals, you put these colons and then say AM, what you're doing is basically here. Oh, sorry. You're basically doing a box and with a variable name, and you're putting the string AM inside it. So that's variable. It's just a box, a container for different types of values, right? Okay. Now, let's move on. Now there's the two different types as well. So besides constant, there's going to be var and let. So the main difference, these two are quite similar in terms of like the use case, but the main key difference is going to be the scope that they can be used in. So constant means you can't change it whatsoever after declaring that variable. So once you declare it, you can't change it. So for example, in this, if I say I want to create a variable, age equals 66, I can't go on and change this like that. This is going to throw an error. So this is wrong. So as you can see in the code editor, this is what we do. We use code editors to edit a code. So in this code editor, you can see that if the color, as you can see, is different shades of blue, means it's not calling the same variable. And in the constant, you get an error if you try to change it, right? So var is a function scope for global scope, and it can be used basically, it can be used inside or outside the scope that you declare it. So here's the example that I have. So let me go ahead and see this. Okay, so in this, you can see that var variable is having a string I am var, and let is let variable I am let. So let is basically a block scope. Block scope means anything that has been declared within that scope can only use that variable. If you try to use it outside that scope, you basically get an error. So over here, you can see this is the scope. How you see scopes is basically you can look at it like a curly braces in a function or outside a class. That would be a scope. So over here, you can see that, okay, you declared this variable, var, type variable, you let, like the keyword let variable, which means you're only able to use it within this scope because it's inside the curly braces. Now, over here, you're trying to call the var variable, which you're able to because you can use it inside and outside of the curly braces, which is the scope block. Now, when you try to call this let variable, this is what you'll get. Reference error, let variable undefined. It's not defined, right? So if we run this code, what it do is, let me go run this code. Okay, let me save this and run this code. This is what you get. So let me go ahead and show you. So it goes through the sequence. So how it does is goes line by line and it prints and it executes each line accordingly. So the first line you declared it. So let me go here. First line you declared the two variables, right? And then later on you console log, which means what console log means is you're printing it out in this terminal. So you're printing out the value from var and then let, which is correct. So I am var and I am let. Now, when you're calling the console log, which means you're printing the value, you want to see the value outside of the curly braces, which is what we call scope, then you get an error when you call let. So when you call I am var, it's fine. But when you call this variable let variable, this is what you get, reference error, because you're only able to use within the scope that you declared it. Right. If you guys have any questions, just feel free to write it in the chat and I'll explain it. Okay, so console log, as you can see earlier, what is console log? So console log is basically used for developers primarily to do debugging, to also test their code and to be able to see like where they're actually, what is actually happening, what is the output of the code. Right. Oops. Oh, times. Okay. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Okay, console login. Cool. So over here, so it takes an input variable. For example, we call this function here, console example. Let me just comment this out first. So in this example, console log is taking in the number variable and it executes the console log and logs the value into the console below. So if I were to run this function, so example, save this, the terminal would basically show me 10, which is the value I actually assigned it, and I declared it in the line above it. So in this function, what it does, I'll explain what functions are later on, but following this line, what it basically means is that after declaring this, I can call the number variable into the console log and it prints out the value that's assigned inside it. So I'm basically, console log is basically displaying like the value inside the box that you created. Right. So this is a good way for developers to be able to see individual lines on what they execute. So in the code above, if you would like, you can also do this console log var variable, and you'll be able to see like you instantly print line by line. So this is how developers usually debug whether if the line of code is the error or the next one is actually giving the error. Right. So this is how developers usually use to debug. Now, for variables, now we understand like what variables are, how do we declare, what are the keywords to declare. Let's go ahead and do some challenges so that you guys can actually understand how to actually declare and use variables in different use cases. So let me go ahead and share with you this. Go to the chat. I'll be sharing you with this link. You guys can go ahead and open this. It basically would bring you to a different page. Let me just present something else. It will bring you over to Stackblitz. So you'll be seeing the exact same page that I'm actually seeing right now. Now I'm actually logged in on the right. I'm gonna let you guys, if you guys are seeing the same page, just let me know in the chat. Basically type like a 1 or something so that I know that you guys are on the same page, or if you guys need more time. Do you guys see it? Good? Okay, cool. All right. So with this link, this is basically Stackblitz. This is a browser code editor. So this is what you can use to debug and also run your code online so you don't have to download anything. So how do you actually create an account? Is go here. So I'm logged in right now. You can actually click the icon above and you can log in. You can create an account with Google, or you can just log in with your Gmail, or you can just log in with like a one sign in with Google. That's what I usually like. So once you've actually created an account and sign in, then what you actually do is you come back to this page and you need to make a duplicate of this project if you want to edit that. Now, have you guys, I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds to create your account. So you guys can go ahead and create your account, and if you guys are done, just type in done so that you guys can just follow along and try to code along as well. Sound good? Okay, let me see if I can come out with a timer. Oops. Okay. If you guys are done, just type done in the chat. My apologies, being late due to work, no problem. Okay, so go ahead and click the link and create an account. Basically, after 30 seconds, you guys have 30 seconds, done, good. So for the rest, click an account, create your account. Once you guys are done, type in done, and then we'll just go ahead and dive deep into how you actually duplicate your project and also start doing the challenges along with me, right? Done, nice, nice, nice. Okay. Cool. Okay. Let me go ahead and share the correct screen now. Okay, so you guys have created an account and you guys are seeing the same page, right? Okay, what you guys are going to do next, now that you've logged in, what you're going to do is fork this project. So basically, it's just creating a duplicate, right? So go ahead and click this button at the top left here. So you can choose different projects, but for now, I believe if you're new, you created a new account, then you don't have any projects. So what you do is just click on it, and it should have the name duplicate, bracket duplicate in here. So parentheses duplicate, that means you've actually successfully created an account. I mean, a duplicate of this project. You can go ahead and like rename it whatever you want. Email challenge programming shop, something like that. You can rename it whatever you want. So then go over to the variables.js file on the left side. Make sure you're seeing this variables.js file, and then you can see challenge 1. So let's dive deep into how do we solve challenge 1. So the first challenge is create a variable name and assign your name to as a string value. Okay, so how do we do that? So it didn't say how, like what to declare. So we can actually use whatever keyword that you want. So you can use const, you can use var, you can use let as well. Now var is what most developers usually try to avoid. So right now the most common ones are const and let. So you can go ahead, let's just do const name equals to. So when you want to declare a string, you need these double, what do you call that? Quotations. Then that declares a string or a single quotation. That declares that is to tell the editor and tell JavaScript that this, whatever I'm typing in between it, is a string. Right. So let's say I'm gonna type email. That's my name. And yep, that is basically challenge 1. So to be able to see the output, you go ahead and do this console.log parentheses, and then you put the name variable inside the function, inside console log. Now, once you've done this, go ahead and click save. And then now that it's saved, to run and debug the code in the terminal, what you need to do is type in node, which is node, and then you want make sure that you're typing in the correct file because we have different files in here. So now, right now, we've created our code inside the variables.js file. So you want to type in node variables.js and then enter. And this is how you actually see the output of the console log name variable. Make sense? Now, did everyone get to that stage yet? If everyone did, give me a thumbs up, or you can type yes in the chat, or 1, whichever you're much more comfortable with. Everyone good? Am I too fast? Good? Okay, cool. So that is how we declare a variable. Okay, so now let me go ahead and comment this or delete it. Now let's go ahead and start challenge 2. Now challenge 2 is a bit longer. So challenge 2 says declare a constant variable first name and assign it. Wait, let me go ahead and do this and assign the string to the value. Wait, and assign string value to it. Okay, declare a constant variable last name and assign a string value to it. Use the console.log function to print a string that combines first name and last name using, okay, we can avoid temporal literals for now because that's like a totally different thing. But right now you can try and focus on how do you combine first name and last name. And the string should read, people call me first name and last name. Okay. So to do this, let's do one by one. Okay, so first one, we're going to actually create a constant variable called first name and assign a string to it. So constant first name, this is the name of the variable. So the name of the variable is first name, and now you want to assign a string value. So let's say my first name is Emil. Second is going to be declaring a variable last name. Once last name equals my last name is Liang. There we go. Now use console log to print the function that combines and output this. So to do that, console.log, basically, we're going to do this. People call me, and then you want to add first name but you want to make sure you add a space in between last name and then put semicolon. And this is how you get the output. People call me first name and last name. So the variable that I'm actually putting my string first name is first name. The variable that I'm putting my last name in as a string is last name. And I'm calling this entire string combination into the console log, which is people space, people call me first name space last name. Right? Let me go ahead and save this and see whether it did it output exactly. Yes, it did. Me first name and last name. There's a space between me and N. Yes. Me. Yes. The reason being is because if you, let's say I'm going to remove this string here, and your output is actually going to be this. So because the string, your first name variable, doesn't have a space in between it. So it's either, you can do this, you can either add a space in here, or you add a space in front of your first name. Then when you run it, it would only print whatever it combines. So if you don't add a space, it doesn't add a space. Make sense? Okay. So this is how you combine strings. You can either do a plus symbol with another string value to it, but also, of course, you need to make sure that whether the string variable that you're adding has a space or not. In this case, because I don't have a space behind me, what I do is I add a space in front of my first name, which then makes it much more easier and readable when you print it out in the console. Now, here's a neat trick. When you guys are going through like a bunch of like testing, now this is where you get a lot of like code here in the terminal. And what you can do to actually clear everything, if this is too much, you don't want to scroll all the way down, all you type in is clear, and you just remove everything, right? Like magic. Okay, hold on. Okay. Hi, can you show again how to run the code? Yes. Okay, so for this code here, I want to run, say I already declared my variables, I already declared them and add them into the console log. How do I run my code? So how to run it is you have to type in NODE because we're running JavaScript on Node.js. For now, this is going to be a bit complicated, but we're not going to touch on that. We're going to touch mainly on the JavaScript. But to run this code that you're using right now, what you do is you type inside the terminal, NODE space, and then you make sure to copy and type in this file that you're using. So right now, my code is inside the variables.js file. So then you type in the name of the file, variables.js. And this is how you, of course, you need to make sure you're saving the file, and then only you can actually see the changes. So once you've saved the file, you can actually type node variables.js, hit enter, and then it would output the console. People call me Emil. All good? Cool. All right, let's see. Okay, let's do one more and then we'll move on to functions. So challenge 3. Now, challenge 3 is create a variable height and assign 175 to it. So the value, the number value 175 to it. Step 2 is create another variable ideal height, assign 185 to it. Create another variable difference, assign the difference of the height variable and the ideal height variable to it, and then console log the difference. Now, there's going to be some math to this, right? Because you need to find the difference between the ideal height and the height, right? So, okay. So first things we can do is const height equals 175, const ideal height equals 185. Now, that's step 1 and step 2. Step 3 is create another variable difference. Okay, another variable difference. And okay, actually I can do a constant this. So, and assign the difference of the height variable and the ideal height variable to it. So it's ideal height minus height. So what it's telling JavaScript is basically you're taking the variable ideal height, which is the value of 185, and you minus 175, which is the variable inside the variable height. Now, if I print this, if I do this console log difference, what do you think would help? What do you type down? What do you think is the output? 10? Are you sure? Yes. So it's not that complicated. Yes, it is 10. That's correct. Yes. So it's just basically doing quick math and then printing out the difference, which is 10. So that's correct. Yes. So, okay, enough of challenges for now. Let me go ahead and walk you guys through like what is functions. Right. So that is basically the whole essence of variables, where you understand that variables is basically a box and you're putting values inside the box, right? So we've done the challenges. Now let's go to functions. Okay, functions as reusable code. So functions, as you can see from previous examples, you've actually seen me explain some variables inside of functions. So functions are basically organized instructions. They are what we call reusable blocks. So when we assign it, we can basically, what we're saying is that we can use this box multiple times, as many times as we want, and they will run the same exact lines of code that is defined inside that block. Right? So yeah, so you can run multiple times without rewriting. So this reduces like redundancy, and so you don't have to like write thousands of lines of code just creating the same thing and doing the same task. Right? That is basically the essence of what functions are. Right? So over here we can see, let me go ahead and close this, make this smaller. Oops. Hold on. Okay, so you can see earlier we did explain like let variable and var variable, right? So now these are actually encapsulated inside a function called scope example, right? So these actually run here. This will actually give an error. So let me just comment this out. I can do this, right? So this is actually a function. So function, the name called scope examples. What it actually does is basically allows me to run it multiple times. So if I were to say, do this, right? And comment this out, save this. What it basically does is actually doing the same thing, iterating and doing the same task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right? Without me having to write, it's equivalent of me doing this, writing this exact block of code 5 times, right? So it reduces like redundancy, and it helps with reusability. So in this case, if I were to run this file, and let's see the output, this is what it looks like. I'm running imvar imlet 5 times. So this is basically what function is. You're just putting logic in between the curly brackets, and then every time you call the function, you're doing the same exact task, right? Now, here comes a little bit of complexity. So that is when we call a function just now without any variables passing inside the function. So over on the left side here, let me get my pen and see. Okay, so you can see function, this keyword here, function, it's basically the keyword to say whatever is behind it is declared as the function. So function is the keyword that you need when you want to create a function. So it tells the editor, okay, you are creating a function, right? So any word or name that you add behind it is basically going to be the name of the function, right? And inside here, we can see in the parentheses, previously we never add anything in the parentheses, so it's an empty parentheses. This time we added x and y. X and y is what we call parameters. Parameters of a function is basically variables that we pass it to be used inside the function. Make sense? So we're passing values so that everything in between the curly brackets can use the variables that are inside. So you don't have to declare the variables anymore. It basically declares it at the function declaration, right? So the curly brackets here is where it defines where the body, I actually blocked everything. Oops. Okay, it's where it defines where the function body lives. So this is anything between these curly brackets. It means you're adding logic, you're adding the functions, you're adding like different things to do. So for example, if you're creating, so like this, so add, it's basically adding these two variables. Actually, yeah, this function is totally wrong. So it's just x and y. So yeah, forget this. This is supposed to be an add. So this is how the function is supposed to be like. Yeah, need to fix that. But yes, so basically it's you're able to use this x and y parameter. When you call it in, you don't have to declare that variable anymore because you already declared it as a parameter in the function, right? And over here, you can see previously we never returned anything. What return does means it's telling whenever you call this function add, it needs to output something. It needs to return or give a value back. So in this case, it needs to return total. And what total is basically the addition of x and y. Make sense? So with this return, it's telling the function that you need to return anything that is declared after, right? So over here, as you can see, const sum, which is a variable, whenever we call this function, add, and we add values to it. So what this does is basically it's adding 5 and 2 as an argument to the parameter of x and y. So whenever we call x and y inside the curly brackets, it's telling JavaScript that, okay, x equals to 5, y equals to 2. So what is total? Can you guys guess? What would be the output if I ran this code? What would be the sum? Yes, correct. 7. So because it actually tells that, okay, you pass 5 to x, 2 to y, and you add them together to be the variable of total. And when you return the total, total is 7. So when you return total, sum equals to 7. Make sense? Okay. Now let's actually go ahead and see how we actually do challenges. So go back to the same project that you have earlier. Now this time you are actually going to, instead of variables file, I want you to look at the left side and click on functions. Now this is where we'll do our function challenge. Right? Let me go ahead, and if you are actually debugging along, you can go ahead and type in clear in the terminal and you basically clear every output that you see, right? Okay, so functions, like I said, is basically something, it's like a box that you can put logic, you can put not just value, but this is like, think of it like a bigger box that you can put variables, you can do logic, you can do different things inside, and everything you put inside it, every time you call the name or call the function, you're just repeating the same process, right? So challenge one, let's see. Here it says create a function named triple that accepts a number and returns the number multiplied by 3. So let's do that, right? Create a function. So function. So to create a function, you have to use the keyword function, declare it. Now the name needs to be triple that accepts a number and returns the number multiplied by 3. So how would you guys do that? So it needs to take in a number. It needs to accept a number as a parameter, and it needs to return a number value that is multiplied by 3 from whatever you take it. So let's go back to the slide and see how we can actually do it. Ooh. So over here, right? We need to take in a number. So something like that. Let me go ahead and erase all this. Right? So we need to create a function in the challenge as triple, and then it needs to take in a number inside the parameter, and we need to make sure that that number, when you return the number, the return value needs to be whatever you put in here multiplied by 3. Make sense? So how do we actually do that? Let me go ahead and share that screen again. Okay. So to do that, now we've actually declared my function triple. So it needs to take in a number, right? So let's just say we call our parameter num. And inside our function, this num needs to return, the return value needs to be multiplied by 3. What this means is we can either do an inline return, what the inline, okay, so let me just explain this. Okay, value equals, so the return needs to be multiplied by 3, so it needs to be number, whatever value we assign number, it needs to multiply by 3, and then we need to return the value. So this is how we do it. Now, if I go ahead and do this, so now here's a trick. When I declare this function and I save it, when I run the code, node functions.js, what do you guys think will be the output? 3. What else? Who else? Who else want to try? What do you think is the output when I run this function or when I execute the file? So when I run this code, or when I try to run whatever code that I have in here, it doesn't run anything. Right? Do you know why? The reason is because when we create a function, the function is the box. Remember? So we're just putting triple and then whatever the value times 3 and return the value. But if we don't call this function, there's nothing for it to return. So we need to do this triple and assign a number to it, say 3. Right? Now, when I run this code, it then understands that, okay, I'm running this function with the value 3 and I'm multiplying by 3. Then the output, let me just record the output const, output equals triple. Now, if I do this console log output, do this. Now, if I run this, what will be the output? Wait, can you guys see it? Let me see if I can zoom in. Is this better? Okay. So if I run this code, function triple, like this, I assign 3 as the argument, and then I log the output. What do you guys think the output would be? You guys can type it in the chat. 9. Yep, that's correct. So if I run this, the output would be 9. Now, yes, it's basically if I type 5, this would basically be 15. So do you see the power of functions? Every time whenever I change the input, I don't need to change this function, or I don't need to like write this multiple times for it to tell me, oops, yeah, for it to basically, I don't need to do this. If I want like 2 different outputs, I don't need to do this, or like this, and then console output. Right. So, oh, yeah, okay. That was an error because, wait, let me see. Error output is not defined. All right. Okay, because I did this. No. Okay, so it's basically 9 and 5. But what I can do, instead of like writing code like this so many times, if I have more numbers, I have to write it multiple times. But what I do is, if I put it and put it inside the function, I can basically, I don't have to do this code anymore. I can just call this triple output 3, 5, and that's it. I don't need to assign like variable. I don't need to do the math anymore because triple is basically doing the multiplication for me, right? So that is basically the power of functions. So let's do challenge 2. Now, create a function greet with 1 argument name. And in the function body, you return the formatted string hello name. So this is what we call template integral. This is where we declare, we are adding a variable inside a string, and JavaScript will basically know that whenever you add this $ and parentheses, it basically knows that anything in between that is a variable that you want to add within the string. So that's when that differentiates between, for example, me doing this, having to add space, like this, for example. And what I can do instead is you do your backtick email, and oh, okay, that's a bad example. Let's say instead of doing this, what I do here is I can declare here like that. So if I were to output this, it's going to be the same as this, but it reduces the spacing. So that means here I would still need to include the spacing if I want to make it nice. So if I say, my name is, this is like probably something in name. So the output for this is email space something space now. Here it reads it exactly the same. So this is what we call a template integral. That's basically the shortcut version instead of like having to do these long steps. So that's just a neat trick, but it's essentially exactly the same thing, right? So first, let's do this first. Create a function called greet. So function greet, and he needs to take in one argument name. So let's just call this parameter name, add a curly bracket. Okay, and in the function body, which is in here, anything in between the curly braces, return a formatted string hello with this name. So we can do an inline. So earlier I would always assign the variable, a variable, for example, value. I'll usually do this, right? But what you can do is instead, if you're just going to have one output, you can actually do an inline return. Inline return means you're going to return immediately from, if it's going to be a single output. So you can go ahead and make it much more easier. So over here like this. So this is what we call an inline return. So you don't have to assign a variable. You don't have to declare a variable to it. You just return the value immediately after the end of the function, right? So that is step 2. Now step 3, create a variable name and assign prompt function with prompt. What is your name? Okay, prompt, basically this. Anything behind it is basically going to output and ask the user to key in the terminal a value or an input. So then it takes it and returns it like a function. So you can think of it like prompt is a function to take in whatever you're going to type in the terminal and spit it out to a variable. So let's say prompt like this, right? Name prompt. So if I do this, anything that I prompt from here, it will basically be stored in the variable name prompt. So let's go here. So over here, if I were to run my function, oh, sorry, what is going on? Output has, okay. Let me go ahead and delete this, save this again. Oh, so you see, debugging is very common and facing error is very common. So if you do face errors and you do face what's that? Errors and issues debugging, that's very common with developers, even myself. So let me go ahead and run this again, functions. So it's basically waiting for me in the terminal. If there's no purple bracket here, right? It's basically waiting for me to put an input. So if I were to put name or my name, email, it actually took my name, whatever I put in here, capital A and M, IEL, into the variable name prompt. So that's how prompt the function prompt works. So now step 3, create variable name and assign prompt function. So I need to do this value, or I can actually name it name as well. Doesn't matter. Name, and I have to do this. So what is your name? So it's basically going to output a string while taking in my input. So if I were to do this, it's basically, so you can see it outputs in the terminal and then it's waiting for my input. And I can type in email. So now you see there's no space in between there. So what we do is we add a space, then it's much neater. Okay, go ahead and clear this. Now, step 4. Create a variable greetings and assign the return value of the function's greet with the argument name. Right. Interesting. So create the function greet. So create the function greetings and assign the return value of the function and assign the return value of the function greet with the argument name. Okay. So okay, I don't get the question. Okay, create a variable greetings and assign the a return value of the function greet with the argument name. I see. Okay. I'm not creating a function, it's creating a variable. Okay, that was my mistake. I did not read it properly. So greetings, that makes sense. So greet name, this is what I meant. Okay, so basically you're assigning greet with the variable name as an argument, which is passed in here, and it returns hello variable, right? And this is the variable greetings. Now we're gonna console log greetings to see what is the final output, right? So if we run the code now, right, what is your name, email? It would return hello email. Now if I run it again, it's gonna ask me what's my name. Let's say my name is Jane. Hello Jane. So this is how we do it, right? We call the function, we take the variable, we prompt, we first call this prompt function, it takes in the variable Jane or whatever we type behind it, then it assigns it to the variable name, and over here we call greet again with the variable name. So Jane is actually passed inside this variable name, and because this name is an parameter here, it would then print out, return the string hello Jane, and whenever you call this function, which is greet, it returns hello, whatever you put in, which is Jane. Then we assign that string into greetings and we lock that in. So let's say if I write here, now what do you think the output would be? With this line of code. Name, I'm prompting, which is what is your name? I'm gonna input Jane, and then I'm assigning greetings variable with the return from greet. And then I log the greetings. What would be the output in the console when I hit enter? Anyone? Anyone? Alia? What do you think the output would be if I hit enter?
Based on my understanding from just now, I keep thinking it's hello Jane again, if that makes sense.
Why do you think it's hello Jane again?
There's not much of a difference.
Okay.
There's no changes.
Go read the function line by line again. So I have a function greet over here, and then I have a variable that calls the function prompt, which asks what is my name, and when whatever you key behind, it gets saved into this name.
Okay.
Then I call greet again, which is this function here, and I store the return in this variable. Okay.
The way that I understand is like you're doing the other way around, like terbalik lah.
Yes. So this is where the function doesn't it won't execute it. So you can put the function whether top or bottom. This is where you actually it will just, when you call greet, it'll go to where the function is. So if you want to look how the sequence look like, it's basically number one here, prompt, what is your name? When I enter Jane, so Jane here is basically, when I enter Jane, this becomes Jane. So it's like this. So now this replaces when I enter earlier, it replaces this. Then because name is Jane, so what it looks like here is basically is as if I'm doing this, Jane, right? And I'm calling this function, I'm adding the string Jane into it when I call the variable. Now let's bring it up. So because it's this function greet here, right? So if I were to put Jane in here, basically this, what that means is I'm going to add the variable Jane in here in this string. So the return is basically going to give me this. If I call the greet function, it returns this. That means when I call it here, it's returning this string. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when I log this output should give me welcome to our beginner event, which is exactly here. Yep. So there is a lot of jumping around, but you need to follow the trace of the code on see, okay, once you assign the variable, when you use it, that means you're using whatever value that has been assigned. So this is how you usually track and go through the variables. And when there's function involved, then there'll be more tracking. Yeah. So this is how you usually visualize if whenever you're assigning new values to a variable. Make sense? Yep. So what you guys can go ahead and do is, so you guys have a couple more challenges. So these are much more harder. I think variables also, we do have like a couple more challenges that we didn't get to cover. So challenge 4 and bonus challenge. What you guys can do is you can go ahead and try doing it by yourself again, challenge all the challenges again, just to get familiar and to actually absorb and understand and see if you actually understood like today's lesson. Cool? Yeah. Let me go ahead and go back to the slides. Okay, right. So that is basically the whole idea of what functions and variables are in JavaScript on a high level. Of course, there's going to be much more in terms of like what you can do with them and how you structure them can be much more complex. But this is on high level. This is how you actually would be using them, right? So basically, this is our beginner-friendly introduction for JavaScript. What you can do right now after this event is you can also go to our other events, which then teaches you on different things. So this just covers variables and functions. Our next event that we're actually looking is actually going to be covering conditional and loops. So this is where developers will make more complex. But first, you have to master variables and functions so that whenever you introduce more complex concepts like conditionals and loops, you'll be able to understand and keep up. Right. So then the challenges will be much more complicated and you have to trace them much more often. Right. So you can go ahead to our website, which is the endpoint of events. So https sigmaschool.co/events, and you can see all our next coming events over here. Basically, let me go ahead and share this link here in the chat. Give me 1 second. So here, this link here is basically to lead you to our events. Now, if you guys want to do like by your own, to be able to like learn and be able to not just learn JavaScript, but explore around HTML and CSS, what we have is also our free coding starter pack that you guys can actually download and test it out. Inside, what it basically has is like a quiz to find out, based on at least like Q&A, based to find out like, okay, what kind of developer are you, or if you're going to be, you prefer front end or back end and stuff like that. So to know like which techie are you. The next one is going to be a free roadmap, a beginner-friendly roadmap that you can actually start your journey in terms of which direction should you go towards to. And then later on, you have 6 projects in 6 days. So what that means is that you have 6 mini projects that you can follow step by steps, and you can actually finish multiple different web pages and web apps by yourself. You're just following the steps. So it's all going to be inside this starter pack. So you guys can go ahead and check it out. So if you guys go to this coding-starter pack, what you guys get is you can fill up the form and we'll actually email you all the information and the resources in there. Then you guys can go ahead and start going through the materials. right? So for those that feel like this is like when you guys are ready, this is going to be for the ones that actually understand JavaScript, understand the fundamentals, and want to take it to the next level. What we have is also immersive bootcamp. This is where we actually take big like actual inspiring developers that want to actually make this a career, and we help them get there by going through an intensive, immersive, cohort-based bootcamp. Right? If you guys are interested, you guys can also go ahead and check it out here. So for those that want to, the process is basically going through admissions and be able to see first, are you eligible if you are the right fit and if you're the right kind of students that we want to be in our bootcamp, right? So you guys can go out and check out our next events, our free coding starter pack, right? Okay, so everyone, I know Alia is the only one that's turned on the camera, but if you guys can turn on your cameras, this is where we'll be taking pictures in terms of like just for memory's sake, right? So if you guys can turn on your cameras, that would be great. So you don't have to unmute yourself, just turn on your cameras and you just take a quick picture. Good? Okay, I only got Alia on. All right, no problem. Shy. No problem. Okay. How about this? Let's turn on, you can use like filters or whatever, but turn on your cameras and add filters to cover up your face or anything like that. Or you can use like the cartoons or anything like that if you guys want. Right? Let me just stop sharing this. Sorry, my cam not working. Okay, no problem. Okay. All right. So, okay. 3, 2, 1. All right, say cheese. All right, cool. Okay, now that is camera time. Now that it's done. Okay, so this is basically our book, basically our beginner programming workshop. We'll be running more of this as well. Basically walking through first the fundamentals, making sure everyone is to help like beginners like yourself to understand and get a good baseline of what programming and what JavaScript is about, right? So we'll be running more of these, and we want to hopefully improve them as we go along as well. So your feedback would be much helpful. So be brutally honest as well. So don't feel free to like let me know, like email. You need to work on your slides. You need to work more on your explanation. Anything, right? That would be great. So you guys can head over to Sigmaschool.co, Sig1 actually, Sig1.co. To events. For the feedbacks, it's going to be this link. I think they keyed in this wrong link. Yeah, so you guys can click on the link. It will basically bring you to a form and you guys can fill out your feedback in there. Sound good? All right. If you guys are still here, you guys can go ahead and ask any questions that you want. Can be anything about us, about like today's lesson, what you didn't understand, anything. No questions? All right. If no other questions, then you can go ahead and check out our future events that will explain more in depth later on like what is conditionals, what is loops, right? So you basically be adding it's like still skill stacking. So you'll be using whatever you learned today, variables and functions, and now you'll be adding conditionals. So you're combining everything together as well. Yeah. Thank you for the session. No questions. Thank you. No questions. Cool. Happy Chinese New Year. Happy Chinese New Year to you guys as well. All right. Okay. After this, you guys will be receiving an email basically sending you all the details as well. So if you guys have any questions or face any issues with joining the events in the future, just feel free to email us, okay? Cool. All right. If no other questions, then I guess we'll end this workshop here. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Cool. Happy Chinese New Year to you as well. Bye.